All right. Hello, everyone. Sarah Knapp here from Mappy Hour. Excited for tonight. We're talking about bike packing. I have a few announcements before we dive in. So the first thing is that we are starting a Mappy Hour forum. We're calling it the Mappy Hour Circle, and we're kind of beta testing it right now. But if this sounds like something that you think would be fun and you want to talk to some Mappy Hour people on the internet, as well as in person when we get back to in person, then it would be great if you could shoot me an email, sarah@outdoorfest.com. Just let me know that you're interested, and we're starting to create a list so that when we do launch it, we can make sure you get on it. The second thing is that we have another event next week. It is how to craft an awesome backpacking itinerary. I'm really excited for that because I know it can be challenging when you're trying to figure out which sources to use, which websites, campsites, water, all that stuff. So this is really about how you plan the route and all the pieces that go into that. So that's next week. And then, I guess the final two things. One is, please be nice to each other in the comments. I will be moderating both this talk and the comments. So just be kind, be curious, treat each other respectfully. And a shout out to our sponsors, as always, the North Face and Sierra Nevada for sponsoring Mappy Hour and helping keep everything going. This is actually the first event in our Summer of Bike Packing series with Sierra Nevada. And so we're going to have a lot of really cool bike packing stuff going on throughout the summer. And we're still putting it all together. So if you do have ideas or things that you just want to know about that we can help make happen, whether it's like a webinar, a blog post, etc., an actual live Mappy Hour, then just let us know. You can put that in the comments tonight. So with that, I'm so excited to introduce our speakers. Leah is still biking home from work, so she's going to be joining us a little bit later. But I'm really excited to have Dom and Justin here. So hello, Dom and Justin.
Hey.
Hey, Mappy Hour.
Mappy Hour. I know. I wish we were all together, but soon.
I know.
All right, so let's kick this off. I know you both very well. Very excited to have you here. But perhaps not everyone watching knows all of you. So it would be great to have just who you are, broadly speaking, where you're based, and how you got into biking and then how you got into bike packing. Oh, yes, perfect timing. We have Leah here too.
Hi, sorry.
That's okay. We literally just started.
Okay, good.
Okay, so just intro, who you are, how you got into biking, and then kind of what your experience with bike packing is, just to set the room a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive into the more specifics of the trail. So Justin, why don't you take us away?
Okay. What's up, Mappy Hour? My name's Justin. I'm currently based in Baltimore, Maryland. So I actually just started bike packing maybe 3 weeks ago when I did this trail. I didn't even own a bike at the beginning of this year, but I had done quite a bit of backpacking, and I just decided that it was time to switch it up a little bit, change the pace up. So I bought a bike, planned to do this route, spent a month getting the gear together and mapping out all the logistics, and then I just did it. So now I guess I'm a bike packer too.
That's awesome. Cool. Dom, let's hear your intro.
Yeah, so my name's Dom. I'm from Los Angeles. I live in Washington, D.C., and I started riding a bike when I was a little kid, and I loved riding bikes. It was always something I enjoyed, but I really started to get serious about it in 2010. And after I'd done a few races and longer rides, I wanted to do something different with it. And I didn't really want to get into mountain biking at that point, so bike packing seemed the way to do it. And Washington, D.C. had a great network of trails and opportunities to hop on, and I had two really good friends that were kind enough to drop me off in Pittsburgh on their way to Ohio so I could ride my bike back, and that's how I did it.
That's amazing. And I will say, I actually think you're the first person that I was following on Instagram who I knew who started bike packing. So you were the bike packing influencer in my life.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, Leah.
All right, I heard there's some static on my bike, so I apologize about that if it is happening. But hi, my name's Leah. I am a bike mechanic here in DC, and I've got into bike packing through a friend about probably 5 or 6 years ago. It was just like a local group that basically like started hosting just like free community bike camping trips. Partly on this the first one that I did was like partly on the C&O and partly on the W&OG trail in Virginia, and kind of like looped through. It was like 45 miles each way. They tricked us and said it would be 30, and so I did the longest ride I'd ever done in my life with panniers and carrying all my gear. So it was a lot, but I totally got hooked. It was just a really fun community experience, and I started doing bike camping a little more pretty frequently after that, and then just ended up liking it so much that I ended up starting a local C&O beginner-friendly like bike camping trip that was monthly for about 3 years. I led it, and I'm hoping to bring it back this summer too, called the Campfire Grind. We just ride about 15 miles out on the trail and camp, sometimes on a weeknight, sometimes on a Saturday, and kind of just like, yeah, can squeeze a little camping trip like into your weekend. And so, but I've camped on the C&O probably around once a month for about 3 or 4 years, and then done the full C&O trip once in the winter, which was a mistake, and then done section of the Gap. Yeah.
So when Leah says that she does it year round, she's not lying. And I've been to some of her organized bikepacking trips on the C&O. And like, I'll be sitting at home thinking like, oh God, like it's 29 degrees outside. We're probably going to cancel, right? And then we get the reminder text saying, don't forget to meet up. We're meeting up here. Bring a helmet and your light. And I'm from Los Angeles, so my blood's really thin and I'm a total wimp. So it's, but I suffered through it and it was super fun. She does a great job with it.
Thank you. It was fun camping with you. Hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah. Yes, bring it back so I can come.
Me too.
Oh yeah, please.
Figure out how to get my bike down to you. Amazing. So also, I forgot to mention this, but for everyone who's watching, feel free to drop questions in the chat. Say hello to each other. I'll be kind of watching it as we go along, so we can kind of stick the questions in when the timing is appropriate. And I'm realizing maybe we should take a step back. I'm assuming most people know what these trails are, but it would be awesome if you all could just do a little like overview. What is the GAPCO? What is the C&O? Why are people doing this? Like, what is this trip that we're talking about? And I heard there's something called the Great Escape. So if we want to talk about the Great Escape team and their relationship, I think that would just be like great context for everyone who might not know as much about the trail yet.
So I'll start with the first part. The GAPCO is short for Great Allegheny Passage, Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. It's a 333-mile nonstop route on crushed limestone and gravel from Pittsburgh down to D.C. And absolutely gorgeous, and it connects a number of beautiful little trail towns with campsites for hikers and bikers about every 15 miles. And in homage to the Great Escape, which I'll let Leah talk more about it, but recently there were 2 members of this cycling team based out of DC called the Great Escape that did what is the fastest known time to have completed the entire GAPCO in 20 hours and 52 minutes.
Just crazy. That's too fast. Yeah, the Great Escape is a bike adventure, bike party, bike racing team that started from a group of us that used to work at a bike shop here in DC called Bicycle Space. And it was called Adventure Times. And then we started doing kind of after work Sunday rides out on the C&O, where we just go like 5 or 6 miles, and there's this like aqueduct where there's someone had graffitied the Great Escape, spelling escape with a K, and just like it's just graffiti like on the wall of this aqueduct, of this kind of like this landing, like kind of just past the Key Bridge on the canal trail. And so we started going out there and having barbecues after work on Sundays. And so my coworker Kevin designed a jersey that just was called the Great Escape, and that was like our team that would like go out and do this like ridiculous rides. And then we started just like riding together, and then started like racing and touring together. I'm not on the team anymore, but it's a crew of awesome people. We used to meet up Friday mornings as well, and hopefully that's coming back at that same spot for coffee outside. And it's a great crew of folks that just like doing big dumb adventures, and racing hard and partying hard. But yeah, the C&O trail is 185 miles between DC and Cumberland. And it's a great resource. You can pretty much just and coming out of Pittsburgh too, the Gap Trail, you can pretty much just roll out of the city, not even have to get in a car. And there's trains that connect them as well, and so you can do a one-way trip really easily and take a train back.
Yeah.
Cool.
Justin, which direction did you go?
I went north, so I started in DC.
And then did you take the train back?
No, so I actually gave my best friend my car. So she dropped me off in DC and then took my car and drove up to Pittsburgh when I got there and met me there. And then we just jumped in the car and drove back home. I think the trains were already sold out when I had looked into it. And I didn't take a lot of time to plan out ahead of time. So there were no train tickets available. So I was like, I got to figure something else out.
Yeah, the train schedule, I believe it's the Capital Limited line that takes you from Pittsburgh to DC and back. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday it runs, maybe Friday as well. But from Pittsburgh to DC, the first train out is at 5:40 a.m. And it's the last train out. So meaning they're all earlier, and you got to plan. The planning's a little funky. But then if you take the train from DC to Pittsburgh with your bike, it gets you in at 11 p.m. So it's very convenient because you can roll your bike on completely. You don't have to take it apart, but just plan your schedules accordingly to get, start when the sun's up, not when it's coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on do you all know how many people are doing this route? When you get on the train, is it you and another, do you think you would see another person who just completed it, or is it that there aren't so many people doing it? I have no concept of this.
Yeah, I don't know. Leah, did you ever take the train? Have you done that?
I mean, my trip was in the winter again, so I was the only one. I think I stopped in a couple bike shops on the way up, and they were like, "What are you doing?" The last other 3 biker we've seen was 6 weeks ago. You're crazy. It was a high of 35 degrees on my trip, and rained one of the days. Would not, unless you're, if you want to survival person it. That was my experience, and it was kind of cool to test my limits, but otherwise might not recommend. So I'm not a great judge of this. That was the only time I took the train.
I did join this GAPCO enthusiast Facebook group, and there are tons of people on there asking about train tickets. So I would assume that if you're able to get a ticket, more than likely you'll see someone else on there as well.
I have not done the Capital Limited train. I have done the MARC train, where I've taken the MARC out to Harper's Ferry and ridden back. That's another one that you can bring your whole bike on. It's just a commuter train. The schedules are much more convenient and conducive to riding your bike outside. And yeah, there it's very common. You just see other people sitting in their kits or their gear with their bike on their lap or standing next to them. When usually they get off between Frostburg and Harper's Ferry. You get a lot of mountain bikers on that train because as you get closer to West Virginia, you get a lot of really cool mountain biking trails. But then obviously, you get to Harper's Ferry, and then that's an easy jump right on to the C&O Canal straight back to DC. But 63 miles from there.
Awesome.
Yeah, the train's an amazing resource. Just being able to roll your bike on. You just pull your panniers off, or even don't sometimes, and can just be able to that great odyssey that took you 4-6 days to complete ends up being a 5-hour train ride, and you're back home, and it's pretty great.
So speaking of how many days, I know there's a wide variety. You could do it in 24 hours if you are exceptionally fit and love pain. But how long did you all do your trips in? What would you recommend? Justin, I know you have strong opinions about this, so maybe let's start with you. And let's hear what you think.
So I did it in 5 days. I started on a Tuesday, finished on a Saturday. I don't know why I thought that I had planned a nice leisurely trip, but that really was not the case for me. So yeah, I basically had to average at least like 66 miles a day. And because of where the campsites were situated and the campsites that I was planning to stay at weren't necessarily 66 miles apart. So some days I was doing 65 miles, other days I did between like 75 and 85 miles, and every single day literally destroyed me from the time I got on my bike to the time I got off at night at camp, and I died. So I probably would not recommend doing it in 5 days unless you're like really serious about cycling and unless you train. Like I said, I didn't even own a bike at the beginning of this year. I did not train aside from like a few Peloton rides the week before. That did not help. I had never strapped all my gear onto my bike and taken it out for a test run. That was another mistake that I made. So I had no idea what I was actually getting myself into until I got out there and hit mile 15. And I was like, oh, like, this is a lot.
This bike is really heavy right now.
Yeah. And I was going uphill starting in DC. So that was tough.
That's an important point. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Going north, you're going slightly uphill the entire time.
Yeah.
And then you get to the Savage Hill and you have to go straight up for a while. And then the ride from Cumberland up to the, I mean, you got that long, windy. So I did southbound. So I did it in 3.5 days. And that was just delightful because it's, I didn't have to pedal the whole time. And one day I did 115 miles. The second day I did 100 miles. The third day I did 65 and then finished the rest on the last day. But, you know, I did it fast, and I don't really advocate for that because there were a lot of, I saw amazing things and I met really cool people and saw these really cute towns. But I did it in like the peak, you know, so Leah talks about she did it in the cold and she was surviving. I did it in the peak of summer and it was just dreadfully hot to the point that, you know, I didn't intend, I actually allotted 9 days to do the whole thing. I took some time off from work, gave myself a whole, you know, more than a week to enjoy it. But, you know, I did my mileage during the day and I'd cool down. But when it's 98 degrees and 100% humidity, you're not cooling down. So I'd, you know, roll into a campsite at night. I'd still be hot, couldn't fall asleep. So I just get back on my bike and keep going. And the next thing I knew, I was done and rolling up on Georgetown. And I feel like I could have, you know, I could have managed my time a little bit better had the weather been a little more cooperative, just from the heat standpoint of it. Because that's definitely a driver and momentum. Plus, yeah, going slightly downhill. I mean, it feels flat the whole way, but there's a slight degrade the entire way down, so you can coast, and that's why I've only done it south.
What month did you do it in?
August. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I haven't done. I'm the odd one out on this panel where I haven't actually ridden all the way from DC to Pittsburgh. I've done basically Pittsburgh to Cumberland and DC to Cumberland, but I haven't connected the entire thing. And so when I did my trip to Cumberland, it was in it was in December. I had planned out about 3 days to get to Cumberland, just trying to take it a little bit easy and trying to do around 60 miles a day. It's 185 miles because I was going uphill, and kind of what Joseph was saying. What you were talking about, where it's a little bit of an uphill slog. But I ended up having to take 4 again because taking weather into account, it's good to add a couple buffer days onto your schedule. I didn't. I ended up having to take an extra day off work because my second morning I woke up and it was pouring and 35 and I almost got hypothermia and I couldn't, like, my bike on the C&O Canal Trail, when it gets wet, you aren't moving anywhere. Like, you pretty much, depending on the section, like the gravel is not very waterproof, and so you end up getting these giant like channels of mud on both sides of the trail. And so you pretty much, like, that day when it woke up and it was pouring, I think I had budgeted like 65 miles and I went 18, and almost got hypothermia and had to camp in a hotel that night because then like put all my stuff up to dry because it was just something I hadn't expected, and I just wanted to be safe because I was feeling very not safe. And so yeah, like it's important to like budget out an extra amount of time just based on if you sometimes if you're uncomfortable you can go extra fast like Dom did, and other times if you're feeling uncomfortable you might have to take an extra couple of days to like maybe let some saddle sores heal, or maybe deal with some weather situations, or if there's high winds there might be trees that have fallen. And so kind of I had some friends that ended up I was going to take an extra couple of days for them to finish because there were trees falling on the trail and they had to carry their bikes over like 7 or 8 trees and it just killed them. Like, and so, yeah. And so, yeah, like there's things taken into account that might extend how much time it takes. And yeah, it is slightly downhill coming from the Pittsburgh or Cumberland direction. From my perspective, I wanted to have a great adventure where I ended up at a different place than I started. And so, I wanted to have that like celebratory, like I'm ending somewhere new and can explore that place for a couple of days experience. Other folks might want to have that experience of I'm ending up back at home and can roll home and take a shower. And so, yeah.
So,
just really quickly, if I do want to do it again, I would definitely double the amount of time that I take, though. I would want to do it in about between 10 and 12 days because there's actually a lot to see. There are a lot of really cool towns that you can stop in and explore, and I pretty much had to bypass most, if not all of it, because I was so stressed the entire time about like getting miles done and getting to whatever campsite I had planned to stay at. So I do want to do it again, and I would definitely take more time just so I can relax and have the leisurely trip that I thought I was going to have this time and didn't quite get.
There are definitely some cute towns to explore and adventure. That's like one of the things I prioritize when doing tours often is I'll do a couple high mileage days and then a few where it's kind of just like either at the destination at the end or somewhere in the middle, like stopping in and kind of like checking out what's going on. If it's a weekend, there'll often be farmers markets or like some kind of art market going on if it's summertime, like, or even just like wandering through town and just like checking it out. Even if you don't go into any of the shops or anything, like there's usually something interesting happening and people might like ask you cool questions about your bike setup. And like, it's kind of just like interesting to interact with people. Often you're kind of a novelty. On those trails, you're less of one, but like depending on where you tour, you can be. And so it's kind of fun to like, just like swap stories. If you see other people that are touring on the trail too and be able to like, just, like have that kind of common community, I guess, that you share with other people. And if you're in a total race pace, it sometimes can be hard to have that. But it also is cool to be able to be like, I did it in 3 freaking days. Like,
I mean, I still enjoyed some of the towns. I mean, I have 2 very fun memories. I mean, many fun memories of it, but 2 that stand out. It was a really hot day and I'd finished my miles and then some. So everything else was just gravy and couldn't cool down, but I was starving and I like needed something more than just my dehydrated food or oatmeal or peanut butter, like what I had with me. So I rolled into this little town called Shepherdsville, where Shepherd University is. In West Virginia. And it was gorgeous. It was this cute little crunchy town with bike shops and gear shops and rafting shops and climbing shops and a beautiful campus and this amazing taco restaurant. And I got in and I like leaned my bike up against the wall, no lock or anything. And I'll touch on that later. It was pretty interesting, but sat down and I ate 12 tacos and a basket of chips. And then was really tired and started to doze off. And this guy who was on a slack line, like walks up to me and he goes, "Hey man, you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm just, a little tired. I'm 70 miles in. I'm just going to keep going, but I kind of needed a nap." And he goes, "Well, my girlfriend's just like, she's making dinner right now. Do you want to come in and hang out?" And I'm in this mood where I'm like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm in West Virginia on my bike, spirit of adventure. Hell yeah. I will take a nap and meet your girlfriend. And so they invite me in and they handed me a towel and said, "You can use our shower if you want." And I like took a little 20-minute snooze and I woke up and I hung out with them for another hour, and they made me a little to-go plate, and then I got back on the road, and it was just great. And I still talk to them every once in a while, and I've visited them a couple times, and that's the kind of people you'll meet on this trail.
That's really sweet.
That
Yeah,
sweet.
I want to touch on the calories situation because I definitely
Yes.
didn't bring enough on my trip. And listening to you talk about the 12 tacos, I was like, yeah, like I made the mistake in the winter of not bringing a stove that would light in cold weather. And so I just didn't have enough food the entire time I was out there. And so when I would get into towns, I would eat like two and a half entrees and like maybe several hot chocolates and still be hungry at the end of it. And like, yeah, when I got into Cumberland on my last day, it was like snowing and I just went into this restaurant at the end. Yeah, I think I ate like 2 entrees and like 2 appetizers. It was just like just stuffing calories in my face, and like definitely take into account that you'll be burning a lot more calories than you might expect. Even like I say, if you backpacked or hiked before, this is even sometimes more than that. And so like you're gonna be hungry for a lot of the trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the dehydrated food really doesn't do it for you. My other fun memory, it's always revolves around food. It was the end of my like second to last day. I forget which day it was, but there's a little town called Hancock, Maryland, and there's a diner there called Weaver's. And it was a long day. I'd done 115 miles that day, and I go into Weaver's, and I'd been there before because if you're ever driving out to Cumberland or you're ever going out towards Western Maryland, Green Ridge State Forest, even heading out to like the other parts of West Virginia, you have to go through Hancock. And so I stopped at Weaver's, where I had a patty melt, I had a salad, I had a full plate of fries and a pie or a slice of pie and a chocolate milkshake, and ate it all start to finish, clean plate club here, and then jumped back on the bike and kept going. But yeah, because sometimes food was definitely a lesson that I didn't learn or didn't prepare well for packing.
Yeah, so that actually ties in really well. So Abby is asking, how much food do you pack versus relying on restaurants and gas stations? Not carrying that weight would be awesome. So how do you plan for that? Or how would you if you were going to do it better maybe than what you did?
So one cool thing about the C&O Canal is you can very much choose, or the GAPCOs, you can choose your own adventure and really curate it's very accommodating. You don't have to carry all your gear. I saw a lot of people who were on kind of cruiser bikes that were doing their mileage and staying at bed and breakfasts every night and like going town to town, eating in restaurants. You can pack your own food. I would also advise like packing snacks, because depending on I would do a little bit of research on what your caloric burn is like on any long ride, and know like when you're hungry and how to keep eating and how to fuel yourself. Because if you don't snack while you're riding, your meals that you have, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your 3 squares, are not going to really do it for you. And it's going to leave you feeling like you have this like calorie deficit, or you're just empty stomach the whole time, and cause you to binge eat 12 tacos and plates full of garbage food from a little diner in Western Maryland. So to answer your question, I would start off by deciding what kind of trip you want to have. You can certainly budget for some of your meals being within restaurants and then backfill with snacks and backpacking food. If you want to be completely off the grid, I would, all of your dehydrated bag meals, you might get 1 bag per meal. I would do 2.
Yeah, for me, I was all about like spending as little as possible. So I planned to camp every night and pretty much eat my little backpacker meals. I'd only packed 2 days worth of food to start off, because you pass through enough towns, and those towns have places where you can pick up more food. There are grocery stores that you can stop in. So I figured that would be the best option for me. So I actually didn't end up buying any more than those 2 days of food. I ended up splitting between like my backpacker food and just like stopping in towns, because I too needed food that was a little more substantial. So that's kind of how I did it. And I don't feel like I spent a ton on food, honestly. So I would definitely do it like that again.
Awesome.
Yeah,
All right.
I think. Oh, sorry.
No.
Leah, how did you end up cooking your food if your stove didn't light, or did you find a way to do it?
I did not. So I brought an alcohol stove, and the alcohol did not vaporize in the cold weather. And so it was usually around freezing when I was trying to light my fires, and it just nothing happened. And so, yeah, I had some freeze-dried meals. I had, I think, a loaf of bread, some cheese, a salami, and some like dried fruit and vegetables. And I just ate the thing. Yeah, so basically I just didn't have, I ate a lot of bread and cheese and salami and fruit, and then ran out of food on my second or third day because I didn't have any of the dehydrated meals, and then just would like be hungry basically. Or like, I think I had like a really big brunch when I was in Brunswick at the Beans in the Belfry. It's a freaking awesome place that's in Brunswick. It's a coffee shop in an old like cathedral. And so it's like stained glass windows and like just this beautiful place, and they have really good food. So it's worth checking in there. So I think I had a big meal there. I had a big meal the night before for dinner, I think, when I was partially hypothermic, where I ate like 3 entrees and lots of hot chocolate. And then I think the next morning I woke up and all my food was frozen solid. I learned a lot of lessons about winter camping on this trip, which is why I got the guts to start doing the trips that Dom came on later on. This was my first ever winter camping experience. So all my food and water froze every night. I didn't know to cuddle with it in my sleeping bag. And so, yeah, I didn't have breakfast and ended up stopping at a bike shop in Hancock, I think. And they sold me probably like 1,000 calories worth of junk food, like snacks and energy bars. And I just ate that, and it powered me all the way to Cumberland. And then that was the end of my trip, luckily.
All right. So I think my question, based on all of your experiences, is like, how does someone that wants to plan their trip figure out how to do it, and like a way, you know, like what resources could they use? I mean, they're getting great tips right now on like what not to do, but like figuring out mileage or like figuring out where to camp, like where do you even start with all this stuff, especially if you haven't done like a longer trip before? You know, it sounds like maybe just like bring double the calories that you think you need or plan to spend some money, but like all the other stuff, the camping, the mileage, that like, where do you even start?
Yeah.
There's a great website, bikewashington.org, I want to say, where there's a great humanitarian that has kind of broken the trails down, at least the C&O trail. And I don't know if they did the GAP too, but the GAP has their own website, the Allegheny Passage Alliance. And they have broken, and there's also guides you can buy that break the trail down into mile counts, and then like which resources are at each mile. And so when I'm planning trips, I'll always look at, like, are there towns? I'm on Google Maps on my phone or on a paper map. I might mark down, like, this is where the hospitals are. This is where, like, that restaurant that I want to check out is. This is where the campsite that I might want to stay at are. And here's a couple alternates in case that one's full or in case it doesn't feel safe. I kind of just, like, map it out a little bit ahead of time. Just kind of looking at, like, if you're already doing, let's say you're, like, bike commuting, and the bike commute is, like, maybe like 5 miles a day or 10 miles a day, like trying out some longer rides and just seeing like what's comfortable, like because if you're doing 10 miles a day, you might think like, oh, 20 or 30 miles feels like a lot, but you probably have a baseline fitness that's better than you think. And so like maybe you can maybe not 66 on your first camp for 5 days in a row on your first bike camping trip, but like, yeah, trying it out and being like, maybe I try just like going out on my local trail and just seeing like how far I can ride, and then like turn around and come back, or like have a friend pick me up or something like that, and just kind of like test out like what's your endurance, how far can you go, and then like from there I test it out with gear on your bike and be like, how far can I ride like with like 30 to 40 pounds of camping gear lashed to the back of my bike, or even with your gear. We can call it a shakedown ride, where you're trying it with the actual gear lashed on how you plan to, and either taking it for a short overnighter or taking it just for a day ride, and just seeing, does things fall off, do they rattle, does it feel comfortable, or is the back end of my bike like swaying, or like how does this feel to me, and then just try and put some miles on it. Or you can even like people will like fill their bags with like sandbags or something, or like jugs of water, and just like try that out if you don't have all your camping gear quite yet, and just see like, how does my kit feel? How does my bike feel? Can I do this kind of mileage? If you're doing a longer trip, like longer than a week, like the GAPCO is great because it kind of, you end up building a little bit of endurance throughout the trip, but like longer trips, you sometimes can like actually train while on the road. So if you're doing like a month, like a few weeks or a month long bike packing trip, like you don't have to necessarily train ahead of time. You just start with lower mileage and increase the mileage as the trip goes on. For a trip this short, I mean, it's long, it's 350 miles, so I don't want to say it's short, but you pretty much like, yeah, like get to know your body, make sure your saddle is comfortable and your bike is comfortable for you, because if you start having pain on day 3, you need to budget in a little bit of extra time to make sure that you're going to take care of yourself and not get injured. And so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's the really important thing on that Leah said is like find a guide that gives you the mile markers or the different mileposts on it. And that'll be a good reference for once you've now calculated what your daily distance could be based on a day ride, either doing a quick overnight or a shakedown ride by yourself, or, a fully loaded long day ride through, just around your neighborhood. Then take that math and hold it up to those trail guides that have the mileage marker on it. Start identifying where the campgrounds are. Or if you're going to do, not full or not supported, meaning you're going to go stay at bed and breakfasts, map out, how far each of those towns are that have those accommodations. Honestly, in my opinion, those are a little harder to plan because there's an added layer of complexity to it, and you have to manage like reservations and things like that. The beautiful thing about the GAPCO and the campsites is they're first come, first serve hiker biker trails. And everyone's really nice on them. So I remember I had one night where all of the spots were taken, but thank God I had a hammock with me, and all I really needed was 2 trees. And so you have that kind of flexibility as well. The other thing that Leah touched on that is really important is learn your body and learn how your body reacts to a long day in the saddle. And a bike is going to move very differently and feel very different when it's fully loaded compared to when you're just cruising on a road bike. And if there is one thing that I can say is worth every dime, it's butter chamois cream. I swear by it now. And I bought a big giant tube of it, and it's probably gone by the time I got back to DC, but definitely do yourself that favor. So
I second that.
Learn how your body works, find a guide that has the mile markers, do the math, get butt cream.
And get your bike fit properly. I think that either getting a proper official formal bike fitting, or just experimenting. If something isn't comfortable, it's usually not your body's fault, it's usually your bike's fault. And you can usually modify things on your bike, just making small adjustments or replacing certain parts, like your saddle even, to make it more comfortable, because the last thing you want is to be injuring yourself as you're pedaling. And then when you start putting a lot of miles multiple days in a row on your bike, if your saddle is causing you physical pain, a lot of chamois butter feels really good for chafing, but if it's a bruising hurt, get that taken care of before the trip. Replace your saddle, make adjustments to it, whatever you need to do, because when you're out there on, day 3 or 4, if you have any pain, you're not gonna be able to fix it. And so you'll just be in pain. And it's good to avoid that if you can, by doing a little bit of front end, practice, and kind of doing some longer rides, what's bothering me. What can I adjust to make it better? Talking to your local bike shop or friends that are more knowledgeable, they can even recommend just little things you can do, and that can make a world of a difference.
So I actually just wrote a little trip report, which is actually posted on the Mappy Hour blog. In that I include some of the resources that I use that really came in handy for me. I mentioned earlier the enthusiast Facebook groups. That was a big help, because there are literally thousands of people in those groups, and they're all asking the same questions that you probably have, and there are thousands more people with answers who have already done the trail. So I posted a question once, and I got 50 answers within the first 20 minutes. So that took care of that for me. There is also a trail guide that I bought. I think it costs like $10, and you can find it on this website called gaptrail.org. So that website also will literally tell you everything you need to know about the trail. They have trip planners on there, and also in the guide, it literally maps out mile for mile, like anything that you may come across from campsites to towns. It'll tell you which campsites are free and which ones you need to reserve in advance and pay a fee for. And also in that guide, they put together some sample itineraries across different like lengths. So I think they have one for like a 5-day trip. They have one in there for like a 7 or 10-day trip. So those were super helpful for me because I knew nothing about the trail and I knew nothing about bikepacking. So those pretty much told me everything I needed to know.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have another question from Abby, different Abby, another Abby. Okay. First of all, this is all great. I'm inspired. I'm curious, what type of bikes did y'all ride? Do you need gravel tires, or is the gravel fine enough that that road bike tires would be okay?
As the I'm going to pass this off to Leah because she's the bike mechanic in the room, and she could probably have the best answer for this.
Yeah.
You can do it on any bike. It's a matter of what's comfortable and what's efficient. So least efficient, fat bike with full suspension, but very comfortable. Most efficient, skinny tired road bike. I know friends that have done it on that, but maybe not the most comfortable because you'll feel every bump and rock in the road, and you also won't have very good traction, and so you might feel uncomfortable and kind of like squirrely or squirmy as you're riding along. And so the ideal tire width is probably going to be somewhere around like minimum 700 by 28, ideally around 700 by 32 tires. So 32 millimeters is the width you'll be looking for. And so if you have small, that's kind of, so 32 millimeters, whatever that converts to in inches if you have different size tires. And anywhere up from there. Gravel tires tend to be anywhere from 32 millimeters to like 45 or so. And yeah, any of those will be great. You can use a proper gravel bike if you want to be all official about it and have like a really fast, fun, stable ride. You can use a proper touring bike if you want to be able to carry your load as like smoothly and centered and kind of effortlessly as possible. You can use like a cyclocross bike if you want to be light and fast and carry like lighter weight bags. There's different kinds of setups you can have. So you can go full bike packing where you have like your soft bags and no racks on your bike. It's all just like bag that comes off the back of your seat and maybe a frame bag that goes in the middle of your frame. That's what you did?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't even have that full setup, but I think that's super cool. So you have to pack so light for it because you'd be much more efficient with how much space you're taking up. Like you have to, everything has to be like ultra light and tight and very small and like compact. And they get a handlebar bag as well for that kind of setup and stem bags usually. So there's all these like little bags, but no racks. Or you can go full on like classic touring. It's great because the trail can take any of it. So classic touring would be like a rear rack and maybe a front rack on your bike and just like panniers, so like saddle bags that go onto those racks. And so I've done it on any of those options. I've also done it on like old mountain bikes and hybrids. I've like ridden it on like most of the bikes I have a lot of bikes, and so I've tried it on most of the bikes in my stable. And it's totally doable on any of them. My favorite one is probably my 90s mountain bike with 26-inch tires. For shorter trips, I'll do it with mostly that one. For longer ones, I might want a bike with drop bars. So it'll give me more hand position. So I'm spending a long day in the saddle. I can kind of move my hands from the drops to the hoods to the top of the bar and kind of be able to have a few more options to put my hands. And so there's many options of what kind of bike to use. I wouldn't say that any bike is disqualified. You can do it on anything. It's a matter of like, is the bike comfortable for you? Can you put long miles on it? Does it carry all your things in a way that is stable and doesn't rattle? Panniers can hold the most gear. The ultralight setups are really fast and fun. But yeah, you want to speak on like how it feels to carry things in those kind of smaller bags?
So I already had a pretty minimal setup from backpacking, so it was a pretty easy transition for me. All I really needed to buy was like gear specifically for the bike and like all the tools and stuff like that. Basically, I took one pair of clothes, which was basically what I was wearing the whole time. And then I had like some rain gear, an extra jacket, and an extra pair of socks. And I think that was pretty much it. I carried my tent. I have an ultralight quilt that packs down really small. But yeah, it was super helpful to have things that pack down really small and that were super light that I could fit into those smaller bags. And you really have to be strategic about how you pack. And there were some things that I couldn't fit into the bag, so I had to find a way to like strap them to the outside of the bag or strap them to the bike itself. So yeah, it just takes a little bit of trial and error and seeing where you can fit in different places and seeing what can hold what. So that was sort of fun to do, but yeah,
That's
it worked
really
out.
cool. Yeah. What have you used before, Dom?
So
What kind of setup did you have for your magical like 3.5 day whirlwind trip?
I think I'll just show everybody if that works.
Yeah.
Let me see here if I can
Yeah, the
share.
screen share.
You can share, yeah.
Yeah. Share screen. Bear with me 1 second. Great.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is what I did it on. So steel frame, gravel tires. They were 32 millimeters wide, front and rear racks. So panniers on both sides. And the good thing about the racks, I could put a couple things on top of it. With the drop handlebars, one thing about these is, the handlebar tape is wrapped really tight on this, and I didn't have really well padded gloves, so my hands definitely got tired. So you want to make sure that either your handlebar tape has got some squish to it, or you have some squish in your gloves to really help relieve a lot of that stress. Because like you're spending the entire day in that position, unless you're on those parts that are that you can ride upright on. But one thing on packing, I definitely brought a lot of stuff. Like I didn't use half of this crap. So I definitely could have gone like a little more ultra light or at least a little more efficient. So I brought a hammock and a tent. I kicked myself because I didn't use the tent once. I also didn't use the fishing pole that's in there. I didn't even really use the bike lock that's in there. I didn't use the sleeping bag at all because it was way too hot, and I didn't use my puffy jacket. So the point I'm making is the things I used the most were my cooking stuff, my water jugs, and if I had to say if there's anything else to bring extra water bottles and Nalgene's, and butt cream for sure, and a book if you want to read and hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that y'all brought but didn't need?
I think I used everything that I brought.
Nice.
Yeah, literally.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think it depends on the season for sure of what you're going to be bringing, because yeah, in the winter time you do need the puffy jacket and maybe a second one. You do need the sleeping bag. You do need everything. Maybe a backup stove in case yours doesn't work. And so, yeah, the setup that you'll use might depend on the season. Like when I do short trips on the C&O Canal Trail in the summer, I don't bring a sleeping bag. I bring like maybe a sheet and a pillow and like a sleeping pad just to be comfy. And so, but in the winter, I'm bringing maybe even like a sleeping bag and a liner and maybe like an extra pair of fuzzy pants or something and socks to put on. And so it's kind of, it'll depend on what you're bringing, of what kind of setup is going to be most comfortable. And then even what kind of bike you bring, because you can use lightweight cyclocross gravel bike in the summer because you're using soft bags and it's really simple. In the winter, it might be something where you want to bring that heavier duty touring bike because you're carrying twice as much stuff. And so it really will depend on the season and like the conditions that you're going out into. Looking at the weather forecast is a good idea too. Because if it's gonna be totally clear, you're awesome. If there's a chance of rain, you might want to bring that rain gear. And so that takes up extra space. Or extra shoes or just like sandals or something as like your extra backup. And so yeah, there's lots of options out there.
Yeah, definitely. If there's a chance of rain, that means it's going to rain, and you want to be prepared for it.
The worst thing is a wet butt on a bike.
And if they say there will be high winds, there will definitely be high winds.
All right.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
no, go for it.
I was gonna say my rule for anything adventure related, I call it the Apple rule: always pack another layer. So if you think that if you have any question about what it's gonna happen, just bring the extra layer, whether it's a windbreaker or like a Mylar blanket. Like, have something that's gonna keep you warm or keep you protected if you need it, because you'll never regret it. It might slow you up a little bit. Maybe it'll be 3.5 days instead of 3, but you won't regret having it with you. It's always good to kind of have that peace of mind.
Yeah, I feel like this trail too, I haven't done it. I'm brand new to bike packing. I've done like one trip before, but it is compelling because it feels like if you like really mess something up, it's like there are hotels or restaurants or something like that like you're not completely in the wilderness. So you can kind of like figure out your gear and figure out all that stuff. I mean, obviously it'd be nice if it was perfectly figured out before you do it, but kind of like as a more introductory experience before doing something that's like a little more off the grid.
Yeah, and the trail conditions for it are, it's great for that. And the trail condition is the crushed limestone is really tight, so it's not like you're riding on loose gravel. And then when you're on the Gap, it's tightly packed dirt and clay and some mixed limestone, and occasionally you have to go on some tarmac to cross from one trail to the other without actually making any turns. Like, you're never out of sight of the trail, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and to Leah's point, there's a town, there's a bed, there's a hotel, whatever, a restaurant,
All right, so Alex is loving the taco, coffee, converted churches recommendations and wants to know if there are any other spots that you're like, can't miss this, either to see, to eat, whatever that may be. Anything else y'all want to shout out?
For anybody that's really into, so the cool thing about the GAPCO is that you can see there's a lot of things to do in these little towns. If you want to break from cycling one day, or you just want to buy some junk food and some ice cream, it's a really cool town called Ohiopyle. They're a really big rafting town and climbing town. So like you could use an entire day, like give yourself a break at Ohiopyle, park the bike, go camping, spend a day going rafting or going climbing or just hanging out at one of the little bars or restaurants or ice cream parlors around there. Totally worth it.
You could also take a shuttle to that Falling Water House by Frank Lloyd Wright. I wish I could have done that. Actually, I did ride past it because I ended up taking a shuttle from Ohiopyle because I was exhausted and the wind was a mess and there were trees all over the trail. So I was just like, I can't do this today. But oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, I was gonna say, can you talk about that? I know we asked for recommendations. We'll go back to that, but can you actually talk about the shuttle for a second as like an option for people?
Yeah. So typically you're supposed to reserve shuttles in advance. I did not know that I would need shuttles, but I happened to come across certain people along the trail who would give me recommendations because they basically could see that I was dying. So I took one shuttle from Cumberland just past the Eastern Continental Divide because that's a 1,700-foot climb in 24 miles. I had already climbed like 700 feet in 185 miles, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. So somebody recommended this bike shop in Cumberland, and they'll shuttle people past that point or past that big climb because a lot of people apparently get halfway and then can't make it any farther. So I just said, I'm not even going to try. So I asked the bike shop to shuttle me past that. That probably cost me about $70. Yeah, I didn't necessarily want to pay that, but I was tired, so I did. I also shuttled from Ohiopyle to West Newton, which was about 42 miles that I also skipped. That was, again, out of desperation. I managed to find a shuttle last minute. That cost me like $160, which, again, wasn't thrilled to pay, but it was definitely the right decision that I needed to make at those times. And I would like to shout out the Bright Morning Bed and Breakfast in West Newton. That place is wonderful. It's right off the side of the trail. It saved my life, and they make a really nice breakfast. in the morning. So I would definitely recommend a stay there.
Awesome.
Yeah, the shuttles are a great resource. I think that, like, yeah, we can get hung up on like the glory of trying to finish every single mile of the trip, or like camp every single night, or things like that. And like, yeah, like it's good to know yourself. There's no point in like getting injured or like just like burning yourself. It's about having a fun, enjoyable experience. Like,
Yeah.
and there's ways to do that. If you're ever feeling uncomfortable, and like, yeah, the nights when I felt like I wasn't going to be safe sleeping outside in the cold, like I used a hotel like that night. And so like there's ways to, like you were saying, Sarah, like like use the resources available on the trail to have a fun, safe, enjoyable trip. And it's great because you can test yourself and kind of figure out where your limits are, take that knowledge and then apply it to either future trips or repeating this one. And kind of I love it because it feels like a test. Is definitely challenging, but there are outs if you need them, and you can use that as a way to kind of learn more about yourself and grow as an adventurer. It's a great space for any of that.
And I would add, even if you skip miles, you can still say that you bike packed the GAPCO, because I did. I skipped maybe
Yes.
4 miles out of 333, and I'm not mad about it. I would do it the exact same way again if I was put in that situation again. So
that's still a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
How many people have biked more than 300 miles? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Not me. All right, so we only have a few more minutes. So like with that, closing remarks from everyone. If there are any other recommendations that you didn't add in, or like just tips for the trail, words of wisdom for all of these up and coming GAPCO riders that we have here. Does anyone have anything else they want to throw in there?
I'll go first. I'll say I'm going to lean in on butt cream again. I can't stress it enough. It's a lifesaver.
This episode is actually sponsored by.
No, I'll say, like, to everyone's points earlier, there's no one way to have a great. There's no one way to have a great experience on the GAPCO. And so really, like, choose your own adventure and don't be bashful about staying in hotels, eating in restaurants. If I had to give one piece of advice, it would be learn some basic bike mechanicking, because there were a couple times where I had some mechanical failures, and thank God I had bungee cords, and they were the only thing that held me together until I was able to go arrive at a bike shop. So learn to love your trail the way you want to do it, and learn how to fix your bike to like a very basic level that'll get you very far, at least 90% of the way.
Yeah, I was definitely all over YouTube and bikepacking.com, just trying to learn the basics. Like, I had to teach myself how to fix a flat tire if I were to get a flat tire, because I didn't even know how to do that. So I definitely tried to learn at least the simplest things, and just try to enjoy yourself. Don't kill yourself like I did. I mean, unless you want to, that might be fun for some people. It's fun now for me that I can talk about it after the fact, but during, I was miserable and I was crying the whole time, and I just wanted to literally die. But yeah, just make it your own. There are tons of options out there for you. So definitely do it your way and have a good time.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think also maybe before attempting 350 miles all in one go, doing some test rides, like just maybe one night out, seeing if you even like your sleeping bag. Is it comfortable for you? Like, how is my bike feel? Do I need to tweak anything? Like, kind of just doing some test rides, whether it's just a shakedown day ride, or ideally like at least a shorter overnight, at least once, and trying to see if you have the ability to do it somewhere in your community and it's accessible. Like, trying it out. Like I'll be bringing back the campfire grind, these little one-nighter, like short 15-mile each way rides on the C&O Canal Trail this summer. And if you're interested in joining on those, there's one that I'll be TBD working with Mappy Hour to put together. Dropping that.
Coming, teaser.
But yeah, otherwise, yeah, like I'll be or finding friends or local groups. The DC bike camping and touring Facebook group, people will sometimes post on it saying like, hey, I'm going out camping, or I would like to go out camping, like Memorial Day, like who wants to come with me? And you can put together a little ride using these community resources. And like every ride that I've been on with other people, whether it's friends or strangers, I've learned something that I didn't know before. And I'm always learning more about like just like things to things to pack for camping, or like that person has a food dehydrator at home. Like that's so great. Like they made like dried pineapple, and I would love to have that for every trip I have going forward. Like, how can I make this happen? Or like the gearing on their bike, they're having such an easy time on that hill. Like, how do I set up my bike to have an easier time on the hill like they are? And so like, I think that the camping with other people and like trying it out with community groups is a really great way to make sure you're gonna have a good time when you do your big trip down the road.
Yeah.
Can I just add one more quick thing?
Yeah.
If something does go wrong while you're out there, don't stress, because there are so many people who are also out riding the trail. And in my experience, there were so many people who were willing to help me. The second morning, my pump just completely fell apart, and I had only used it like one time before that. And someone saw me struggling, offered to let me use their pump, and my problem was solved temporarily. So if you get a flat, or if your chain breaks or something malfunctions, don't worry about it. You're not that far away from civilization. You'll probably see someone riding by who might be willing to help you. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because I think the trail always provides to those who need it. So definitely just feel
And on the flip side of that, if you see someone else in need, they're broken down, you have to help them, because karma goes a really long way. And honestly, you'll just feel guilty the rest of your ride that you didn't help that one person, you know, that you passed that was broken down. So
yeah,
it's always worth it helping someone else. Yeah, I think it's always worth it. And you build so many more like stories or experiences around those moments where you're helping somebody, or you are, and they kind of those little community like coming together moments. I think that bikes are especially special where if you I always will carry a full repair kit with me wherever I'm going. I mean, I'm a mechanic, so I'm a nerd about it, but like, yeah, like even if I don't need it, like someone else might. And so it's definitely good to look out for other folks. There are sections of the trail that don't have cell reception, and so just keeping that in mind, making sure you can be self-sufficient out there if you need to be is important. And like sharing your plans with someone else before you head out is a good idea too.
Love that. Amazing. Well, we just hit an hour, so we're at time, but I feel like we covered so much. There's a lot of planning to do, but a lot of really good tips in all of this. So with that, thank you all for being here and sharing, and helping us maybe avoid some of the mistakes that you made and have really successful, awesome trips. And with that, good night, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Mappy Hour.
Thank you. Yeah. This was so fun.
So fun. Loved it.
I'm excited to bike with all of you.